episode 341 of Cinematary. I'm your host, Zach Dennis. I'm here with
Jessica Carr,
Jesse Alva,
and Andrew Swafford.
In today's episode, we're going to be talking about movies that we saw this week in part one. You know the drill, and then in part two, we're going to be talking about some Tilda Swinton, some 2009, some I Am Love. Oh my God. This is an audio medium, but you can't see. We've been trying to get this thing working for about 30. My computer crashed. We got our stupid recording bear keeps jumping in and out. I mean,
don't ask why there's a recording bear. Just
it's a real bear that we hire every time we record the podcast.
To be fair,
he is smarter than the average bear.
To be fair, to this bear, this is more entertaining than the 2 hours of I Am Love. So honestly, we're making it fun. So let's go ahead though. Let's get through it. Real quick though, please head over to cinematary.com. We got a review of All the Boys, Always and Forever.
It's a good review.
It is a good review. It's
about COVID.
Is that what it's called? I thought it was P.S. I Still Love You.
That's the second one.
There's another one?
Yeah.
Holy hell. Oh my God.
There's so many boys, there's just so many boys that we gotta have forever. I mentioned it last week though, we also have Earwig and the Witch, a review from Michael O'Malley, and then Little Things from Crew Smith. So got some new releases, Screw you, 2021, and your
I was like, where are you going with
release
that?
schedule? I don't know.
Screw you, 2021.
I don't know.
It doesn't seem like any of these new releases are all that good. So I guess screw 2021 for that too.
That's true. Let's go ahead and jump into movies that we saw this week, finally. Jessica, I'm going to lead it off with you. You've been watching a children's program on Adult Swim.
No, that is not it. So, I recently watched Shop, a pop opera, which is a claymation short film that is by musician Jack Stauber. You might know him from the TikTok jingle that has been going around, that is I don't know how to describe it, but it's whenever somebody kind of messes up, it plays, but he has really good music. He released an album that was called Micropop that was just snippets, they were somewhere 30 seconds long, somewhere a minute long, and I think in total there was 50 songs or something like that. So his thing that he's working in is kind of having songs that have these catchy pop jingles to it. He has a lot of synth in his music, but he has actually made songs that lots of people like they're very catchy, but they're also very artistic. And if you watch any of his music videos, Dead Weight is a really good one. He uses claymation. He makes all of his own videos, and he uses claymation. It's a mix between having real people in them, but also having claymation in it. So it'll be a person's body, but a clay head and that kind of thing. And it's kind of off kilter. It makes you feel things are kind of weird and mix matched kind of. But Shop, a pop opera, debuted on Adult Swim in 2019, and it was a 15-minute short film about a guy who's just at the grocery store, and he has a list of things that he's trying to buy, and for every item that is on his list, he just thinks of a song, and he gets to milk on his list, and he starts to think about he picks up the jug of milk and the milk is expired, so he starts to think about mortality and what was this milk's life like before it expired, and why is it just sitting here now and nobody wants it, and that kind of thing. But it's someone in their Letterboxd review compared it to having ADHD, where you're trying to do simple tasks, but things keep popping up in your head, and it's kind of like you can't focus on one thing. And I thought that it was really, really good. The songs, it's really funny because his like main talent is that he can come up with like a 20-second song and it's just forever stuck in your head. So like the song for the milk and the song for the cheese were like using food puns, but were also like very catchy, and he just like, it seems so simple, but he's able to make just like rapid fire like jingles essentially. But I thought that it was really good. He has another short film that I want to watch, but it looked kind of freaky. Like, he kind of dabbles in horror a little bit. If you follow him on Twitter, he will, like, tweet just, like, 10-second videos sometimes. And it's, like, there's one of a guy who was, like, diving into his pillow, and he found, like, an underworld-looking thing. There's another one of him, like, peeling into his body. I mean, it's just like there's lots of like weird body horror claymation stuff too, but I think that what he's doing is super interesting, not just as a musician, but he's also trying to make short films, and like maybe one day he will actually be able to make like a feature-length movie. I would be really interested in that. But if you want to watch Pop a Shop a Pop Opera, not Pop a Shop Opera. If you want to watch it, it is on YouTube. So just look it up, and it's like only 15 minutes long. I would check it out.
It sounds really sweet. I feel like that's kind of something I would do, honestly. Like, start singing a little song about milk and cheese and stuff like that when I'm in the store.
I can confirm that is a thing you would do.
It sounds cute. Huh?
I said I can confirm that is a thing you would do.
It's absolutely something I would do, so I bet I would like this a lot.
It is,
and I like his song
sweet
Buttercup.
and cute, but there are also, like, elements in it that are kind of weird. Like, he runs into people when he's out of the store, and there's, like, a lady who's, like, super strung out on caffeine, and there are parts of it that are very dark. It's, like, cute, but it has, like, dark undertones, for sure.
This reminds me of a show that Nathan talked about a couple weeks ago, but I would highly recommend on it's on HBO, but if you have HBO Max, you can watch it there. But How To with John Wilson, it's kind of a similar vibe, where he just like has one thing and then it just kind of spirals into a bunch of different things. So a little connecting. So all right, well that's good for Jessica.
Good
wow,
for
thank
Jessica.
you.
For her.
Yeah, no problem.
A little pat on the back.
All right, Andrew, Jesse, do you want to talk about? You got two movies.
Yeah,
we
watched 3 movies this past weekend.
Well, I got 2 movies on the list, so you better kill one of
yes,
those.
and one of them, yes. Yeah, one of them is I Am Love, so it's all good.
Loving.
We watched 3 movies this weekend. 1 was Beyond the Valley of the Dolls. 2 was Bob and Carol and Ted and Alice.
That is the name of the movie.
And 3 was I Am Love. And so we're going to talk about all of them, but we're going to talk about I Am Love later.
Eventually, yeah.
So Beyond the Valley of the Dolls, I'd seen this. I'd heard of it before. I think when we were in Cinema Club,
yeah,
that was,
it was
on our
the
sexploitation ballot. I felt like I was kind of going in with like a caution. I thought it looked weird, and I don't know. Andrew had the idea once more of watching it. I think we saw it on a list on Twitter or something. And it was written by Roger Ebert, so you'd think like, surely this guy has the authority on what a good movie is should be, or at least he seems to think he is.
This guy should know some stuff.
Who does this guy think he is?
But I did not like it. Almost, I really didn't like it. I almost could have liked it. What was it that you said, Andrew? Like this is almost a good movie if nothing in it happens.
My review on Letterboxd was the only thing stopping this from being great is literally everything that happens in it.
I mean, like it could just be like a cool vibe movie of some like hippie bandmates that are kind of strolling around California, living the free love life, and that would have been great. But they complicate it with just stupid shit. And
well, it's like really upsetting often. Like, a lot of horrible things happen to people in this movie. Like, often in contexts that would otherwise be kind of titillating for the audience. And I think that that's supposed to be a sort of subversion. It's supposed to... almost like you guys talked about Bad Girls Go to Hell on the Young Critics series last summer. Like, that was a movie that was, like, really violent and aggressive and brutal, but it played in porn theaters, and so it's kind of like has an antagonistic relationship to the audience. And I felt like the same thing was kind of happening here.
I mean, I feel like it was like basically kind of Go to Horny Jail, the movie.
Yeah.
Like, it seems like it felt like the messaging throughout the movie was like, oh, you wanted to see like a cool, sexy movie. Well, fuck you. Like, that you shouldn't be.
Do you remember many of the awful things that happened to people in this movie? I remember one
don't.
is that a woman basically gets forced against her will to have an abortion.
Yes. And then
a guy commits suicide.
A guy like jumps and tries to kill himself. And you're just watching it drag out. It's like, it's not great.
There's some rapey stuff in there.
Yeah. And then like the final scene where a person reveals that they are...
and there's like awful things that happen to like gay and trans people in this movie too. Like, it's so rough. And the reason it's so disappointing is it's actually super well made. Like, that's kind of the point of my Letterboxd review. That I was just surprised by the level of like filmmaking talent on display here. Jesse said it was written by Roger Ebert, but it's directed by Russ Meyer, who I'd never seen a movie by before, and I've always just kind of assumed, based on Russ Meyer's reputation and his fan base, that it would just be kind of like some schlocky, cheap, like kind of porny stuff. Mm-hmm. But no, dude is like a filmmaker. There is some incredible editing in this movie. Like the cutting is
crazy ambitious.
The cutting is so fast and ambitious. It feels like almost a
avant-garde.
There were times where it felt avant-garde because there was no possible way I could keep track of these conversations. Like, they were coming so fast and they were overlapping, kind of like the Robert Altman style, to the point where you have to just kind of like turn your brain off and stop trying to track all of them. There's also this really beautiful sequence just like 10 or 15 minutes in where people are in a car driving, and we're seeing like the superimposed map on top of the screen, and it's just like scrolling horizontally right to left, but it does it for a really long time, like minutes and minutes and minutes. So that's where it really started to feel like an avant-garde film to me, where like, this is a movie with like texture on the screen, right? But yeah, it was very like unpleasant to kind of see where it goes, and it kind of ends up having a roundabout conservative message by the end, where you have characters who have been kind of like living this very hedonistic lifestyle, settle down and like get married monogamously.
And those who don't like die, basically.
Yeah, the ones who don't die. Like, very weirdly moralizing, but apparently it's supposed to be like a spoof of like anti-sex or anti-porn arguments. I don't know. It didn't read that way to me at all.
No. It just mostly it pissed me off, honestly.
Yeah.
Because it just felt very like kind of sex negative and embraced like conservatism positive, and I don't know what he was going for, but that's all that it gave me. And it was also like kind of a little bit transphobic and LGBT phobic.
Oh, a lot, yeah.
But whatever.
Checking all the boxes.
Yeah.
On the other hand, we have a very sex-positive movie to follow that up with. Jess, do you want to talk about Bob and Carol and Ted and Alice?
Bob and Carol and Ted and Alice. So, yeah. Oof.
It came out a year before.
Beyond Valley of the Dolls.
Valley of the Dolls was 1970. Bob and Carol and Ted and Alice was 1969,
Gotcha.
I think.
So another sort of along the same lines of like some, hippies sort of figuring things out for themselves, I guess. It starts with a married couple going to this like, what do you call it? A new age
retreat. Like a spa retreat.
Like a therapeutic retreat of some kind.
As the Hallelujah chorus plays over the opening credits.
Oh my gosh, how do I talk about this? Well, spoiler alert, it's one of my favorite movies I've ever seen.
It's really good.
It's so good. But so they go to this like therapeutic retreat, and they, you know, you're kind of sitting with it as you're sort of watching these scenes play out of people saying, well, I feel this and I feel that. There's kind of, I think, an initial reaction for the viewer to think like, oh, this is some hippy-dippy new age bullshit. Like, this is so lame. But what ends up happening, and I think that is very genuine, is that the couple actually realizes, oh, wait, we've got some actual problems here, and we actually need to talk about them. And so they come back from this retreat with this, like, new, like, total insight moment of, like, we need to be honest with ourselves. We need to be honest with the people in our life. There's no point, like, you know, just like wearing layers of like act, like being an act, like, but we just need to be who we are and say what we think.
They embrace the idea of radical honesty, of just kind of like saying exactly what they mean and what they feel, regardless of kind of the consequences of like how people might respond, because they just want to be like genuine and authentic, right?
And just like social niceties is just, it's just fluff. Like, there's no point.
To the point where it's played for
silly.
laughs, where they like start trying to get sentimental with like the waiter at a restaurant, and it's like funny, and you kind of realize that they don't really know what to do with this idea.
But then they end up kind of taking that to another level when the husband goes away on like a business trip and ends up having an affair. And he tells his wife about it because they're trying to be all honest with each other. And she actually responds like positively about it. Like, oh, well, yeah, I'm not jealous, actually. I feel like happy for you that you did that. And it kind of totally flips, I guess, how they view their relationship at that point. I don't want to like just retread the entire plot of the movie.
It would be easy to just kind of like outline all the plot beats of the movie, because the movie kind of functions as a really cogent argument about, you know, various relationship mores and like just like the psychology of relationships in general. And like you said, it's incredible. It's like maybe the smartest movie about relationships I've ever seen. Like, every scene feels incredibly insightful.
It just feels so real. Like, so one of the most interesting things I found about the movie was that every scene is really, really, really drawn out. Yes. It's not just like a quick scene of like, oh, hey, how are you doing? Good. Let's go like get some coffee. Like, they really, really drag out scenes, and almost in a way I found very similar to like the Before trilogy. But because of that, they really like these characters are really navigating some big philosophical, what's the word I'm looking for? Revelations in their mind, in their personal. I mean, that's good. That's the good word. And so, like, they're grappling with these like big, heavy schematic changes of how they originally viewed the world. And so that's not something you can complete in like a 1-minute scene. Like, they really drag out these scenes 15, 20 minutes, and you're really watching these characters reconcile with like completely flipping their worldview. And it's really, really interesting to just see that happening in a very authentic way on screen. And it's just something, especially the way the scenes are so drawn out and the characters' responses and reactions in all of these like critical moments are just so genuine, I think.
It feels very real.
Yes.
And like, it has a level of frankness about sexuality and the types of very unglamorous conversations that happen about sex inside a marriage or any sort of committed relationship that I don't think I've seen on screen outside of this movie.
I thought the actors just did such a good job in these roles, really, really fitting into these people and really showing growth in all of these people. There's also, a lot of the movie centers around the first two people in the title, Bob and Carol. But then Ted and Alice are kind of within the movie of being this couple who really have some issues that they have not worked out yet. Their libidos are mismatched. Their communication is very toxic. And so, like, as they are spending time with this other couple who's, like, just, like, firing off, like, crazy philosophical, like, alarms in their face, or in their heads, this other couple is, like, I guess their conflict is really coming out on the table, and they're having to deal with that.
They're recognizing that there's a lot of like body shame and sexual shame inside at least one of them, if not both.
And so it touches on, just like the sexual shaming that I think that women especially are raised to feel, this like sense of embarrassment and shame about our bodies, or feeling that we shouldn't be sexual, or that like it's more typical for men to be sexual and not for women to be sexual. And so these are messages that I think a lot of women get internalized so heavily that it's hard to override that, even when you're in a healthy married relationship. I don't know that I'm doing this justice.
No, you totally are. And I feel like we probably shouldn't say too much more about it, because it's a movie that is, it is very plot driven. And that's where a lot of the value of the movie lies. So I don't want to spoil the plot for people. I will say that the ending is kind of contentious, and I've read a lot of reviews of the movie that have a very different read on the ending than I have. But if you end up watching this movie and are not sure what to make of the ending, I will say that like my 2 cents is that you are meant to read the ending as wholly symbolic. Like everything up to a certain point literally happens, and then once things start to feel odd, that's when things are not literally happening anymore. Now we're kind of moved into the realm of the symbolic, into the metaphorical. And also there's these 2 songs that bookend the movie. There's the Hallelujah chorus at the beginning, and then I forget the name of the other one, but the other one has like very straightforward and sincere lyrics about society needing more love in it. The world needs love, And I think there is, because this movie is very funny and it's kind of a comedy of manners, and it's been described as a satire, I think a lot of people view it as a critique of these characters' lifestyle, but I think it is absolutely not. Like, I think it is 100% sincere and genuine in thinking these people are like striving towards self-improvement in like a really admirable way.
Yeah, in a very vulnerable way. Like they have to deal with feelings of jealousy and feelings of frustration, and they air that out and they fucking deal with it. And I just think, I don't know. I found something about it very, very tender and genuine in a way I just don't feel like I see all that much on screen. And I'm really excited to watch more by Paul Mazursky.
What is this guy's name? Hold on. Mazursky. Yeah. I had never heard of this guy, but man, this movie really blew me away.
We checked it out from our public library and then proceeded to buy it that night. But I don't know, where could you stream it if you wanted to?
Hold on, I can tell you very quickly. It is on Amazon Video and on YouTube.
Also, if it helps, everybody is very attractive. Mostly the girls. But the guys are...
The lead guy, Bob, looks like Robert Redford.
Yeah, he does.
So are you serious? I'm sorry. Did you just say everybody?
Okay, mostly the girls, but
this. Can you
see him?
He's
medium.
fine. There's plenty of.
That's
really
Elliot
angles.
Gould.
What's wrong with Elliot Gould?
He's like the most famous person in the movie.
Yeah, it's Elliot Gould.
Okay, mostly just the girls, but that's plenty for me. It's fine.
I don't know.
Anyways, go watch it.
We got to watch. It's unfortunate that we're just doing this with audio, because if you got to like watch through that explanation, you could watch Jessy like galaxy brain like halfway through, and she was just like, there was a lot of arm movements. She was just like, oh.
There's a thing that the characters do in the movie where they have that light bulb moment. They just like stop everything they're doing. They say, "Insight,
it's
insight."
So funny.
We
it's
have
so
quoted
cute.
that many
it's
times,
so
and we'll continue to do that.
It's one of my favorite movies I've ever seen. The end.
All right. Well, Bob and Carol and Ted and Alice and Bill and Ted. It's available on Amazon and YouTube, and you can probably go to Andrew and Jesse's house and watch it with them.
True.
Just cue it up.
It's so good.
All right. Well, I'm gonna take us on a whole other side, because this movie's not like that at all. It's like, you know how important love is? Well, let's bury that below like 5,000 feet of rubble, and then have like a little glint of melancholy, and that's all we're gonna get. Yeah, we're gonna get some Mizoguchi time. But it's also a movie that I watched and I was like, this movie's fucking awesome. Which is actually the first time I've done, because we've talked about, we did the story of the last chrysanthemum for Young Critics. We did Ogetsu.
Yeah, the ghost one.
Yeah.
Ogetsu.
And both of those I liked well enough, but it really didn't really catch me. This one though very much caught me. I think this is the first afterwards I was like, I'm gonna try to dig into some more Mizoguchi. This movie is Sanso the Bailiff, which is his, I think one Sansho the Bailiff. Sansho the Bailiff is an asshole, so it's fine. We can insult him and mispronounce his name. He's trading slaves and stuff, so it's fine. Let's not apologize for Sanso. Yeah, no, we don't. But this story, it's based off of a Japanese folk tale, and it kind of presents itself in that way. It has this really beautiful opening shot where it kind of presents the story in this kind of folk tale guise. But pretty much what happens, it takes place in medieval Japan, and a governor of a province, I think it's a province, something. He's sent into exile because he cares about his people too much, and the emperor or the whoever's higher than the governor is nah, I don't like that. And so when he's sent into exile, his wife and his children, a boy and a girl, are sent early because they're going to go and join him. But in the process, as they're trying to get to the place where he's going to be exiled, they're intercepted by the slave traders, and the mother, the wife of the governor, the mother is taken to one place where she is sold off to, and the kids are taken to this other place where they're sold off to, and they're sold off to Sansho the Bailiff, who not a nice guy, just not a nice guy the entire movie. And so that's the first 30 or so minutes of the movie, and then the rest of the movie, it ages up the kids about 10 years, and it's about them trying to escape and find their parents once again. And I was thinking a lot during this movie, one, about Mizoguchi's style, because he's kind of a tough one to get a hold of, Ozu is very much doing Ozu stuff. Kurosawa's doing Kurosawa stuff. And Mizoguchi's much more understated in how he creates his worlds. And I was thinking about this, and then I was really glad to see friend of the pod Peter Labuza made this connection as well. But Mizoguchi is pretty much the Japanese equivalent to John Ford, where he's kind of engaging with these larger themes, but does it in such an understated way that it kind of, I think, can get lost on a lot of people. I love Kurosawa, but he is very much like a Spielberg, where the themes that he's presenting are worn on his sleeve, and he's very bombastic about it. You think of I was thinking about two death sequences between this movie and Seven Samurai, and both of the sequences are fantastic. But in Seven Samurai, you have this portion a ways into the movie where a number of the samurai die in the first assault by the bandits on the village, and you have this giant spread where they're on this mountain, and they have the flags of the samurai on the graves, and the wind is blowing, and it's this really powerful moment, but it's so active. There's so many. You have the wind blowing, you have the people's clothing just kind of waving in the wind, you have the emotions on their face, you have Toshiro Mifune reacting to everything and running that's the part where you have the iconic sequence where he runs up on the house and stakes the flag and everything, and it's just very outwardly emotional. And then you have something in Sanso the Bailiff, where you have one character who commits suicide. And the way they do it is and it's honestly one of the most hauntingly beautiful scenes of movies I've seen in a long time. It reminded me a lot of the scene in Night of the Hunter when you see Shelley Winter's body in the river, where it just looks like mystical and scary and just and so what happens is you have like the trees of like the forest. You don't have any music or anything. You see the character kind of in the background. They're moving across, like they're like doing something in the forest, and they move toward the river, and they just walk straight to the river, and all you see is like you see them walking to the river and like the ripples of the water until you don't see them anymore, and you just see the ripples of the water, and it just like sits there. And then it cuts to something. And it's just like it doesn't like go and so just kill. It's just very understated. It's very I was reading this really great review by Jim Emerson on Roger Ebert's website from the 50s. And he was talking about how, and it's very true that Mizoguchi, his movies, he's very like in tune with like the environment. And this movie is very much that way. Like it's all about the emotions are, again, this is audio, but the emotions are like all here. It's not here. It's not like with
Zach is waving his arms in a large circle around his head.
Like, yeah, so the emotions are all like around the character. It's not in the character necessarily. And it's true. Like you have like the way that the environment, like you just have this reverence for the space and the environment around you in this movie that that's why I really want to go back and watch like Ugetsu and The Story of the Last Chrysanthemum and a number of other Mizoguchi movies, because I think it's something that you don't catch on your first viewing because you're so, when you first watch a movie, you're so engaged in like what the story is, so you can kind of follow it along. And I think with Mizoguchi's movies, it's more like the story's there and it's not uninteresting, but what you're supposed to be like gleaning from the movie, like what you're supposed to be taking away, is coming from everything around it. And it's about how the environment and how nature is in touch with the characters and how the characters interact with nature. And I think it's just very in tune with this very Eastern philosophy that is very lost in not only just filmmaking, like Western filmmaking, but just filmmaking in general. I think I had a friend recently who watched My Neighbor Totoro for the first time, and he was like, I didn't hate it, but like, and don't take this the wrong way, but what was the point? And I was like, well, you have to kind of look at it in a different way. It's not a movie that's sitting there going, like at the end, like handing you a pamphlet and going, this is what it was about. It's just dealing with a different spiritual level that I think Miyazaki is very similar to Mizoguchi in this way, where it's more about the aura. It's everything around what's actually happening. It's not about what's actually happening, because what's happening is consequential, but in the long run, it's really not what you're going to remember. Another great line that Jim Emerson had in his review was that Mizoguchi works in memories. He doesn't work in moments. And so this whole movie is about like these small little subtle things that in the moment you don't think of, but it's something that the characters latch onto, and it drives them throughout their lives, just because it's about the way that the trees were swaying, and you could hear the wind against the trees, and you could hear the wind in the meadow, and you could hear the seagulls on the ocean, and something's his mom's leaving, or he's being taken away from his house, or he's escaping the place where he's being held, but it's all about these other things that are happening around him. That's how he remembers it. He doesn't remember it as like this great moment where he escaped this terrible slave trader. He remembers kind of his sister's face. He remembers the what he was hearing and seeing around him. And I think that's such a beautiful way to kind of like engage with the movie. And so I know that we were kind of mixed on, or at least kind of tepid on Mizoguchi's stuff when we did the two Young Critics movies, but I think this is a good place to start. I think it's a little bit more like if you're interested in checking him out, I think this is probably a better place to start than Ugetsu or Story of the Last Chrysanthemum. But I'm excited to kind of dig more into him. I think he also understands. I think we talked about this with Chrysanthemum, but his female characters, he handles women in a way that's much more nuanced than any other director, especially on the Japanese side. Like he's a much better handle on kind of the interiority of women than somebody like Kurosawa, or Ozu's a little bit better, but definitely Kurosawa. So Sansho the Bailiff, I recommend checking it out. It's on Criterion Channel. It might be on HBO Max also. They have a bunch of different like random Criterion movies there, but it's really, really, really good. So 2
big recs this week before we jump into.
No, it sounds like we all watched movies that we really
3
liked
big
this
recs,
week.
Yeah. And we'll get into the last one. All right, well, we're going to take a quick break, and then we'll be back talking about I Am Love after this.
Hello, Cinematary listeners. This is your favorite Filipino podcaster, Jessica Carr. I'm here to let you know about a couple of things that Cinematary offers that you might not know about. First, if you're a fan of what Cinematary is doing, please consider joining us on Patreon. Remember when we weren't clamoring for your dollars? Well, now we're just clamoring for 5 of your dollars. So please help us and donate to our Patreon, and then you'll get exclusive content from our staff, including our Film Theory and Chill series, where a panel takes a piece of theory each month and deconstructs it before diving into whatever topic is on their mind from the past week. The $5 each month is investment in the website and the podcast, and it goes solely to paying our writers for the reviews each week, so please consider doing it. It's only $5. If you missed an episode of Cinematary or a piece of writing we've had, you should consider signing up for our free newsletter. Each Sunday, we send out a note with the latest podcast episode, piece of Patreon content, and the last 2 reviews that we've written at cinematary.com. It's perfect for those of you who are interested in what's happening, and it makes sure that you don't miss a single Cinematary review. Finally, the easiest thing that you can do to help us is to please give us a rating and review on iTunes, Spotify, or whatever else you're using to listen to the show. This helps us get more eyeballs and ears on the podcast and the website, and it helps the people know about Cinematary, which is really what we're here for. So to recap, consider donating to our Patreon, sign up for the free newsletter, and give us a rating or review. We would really appreciate if you could do these things. Thank you for listening, and now back to the show.
And we're back with part 2 of episode 341 of Cinematary. In this part, we will be continuing our Tilda Swinton series with 2009's I Am Love, which is directed by Luca Guadagnino, from a script by Guadagnino, Barbara Alberti, Yvonne Cotoroneo, and Walter Fasano. The film's
Dang.
Gonna be a good week for names on the podcast.
What?
Zach said arrivederci.
I took Italian in college, so I can kind of say
that
this.
That explains it.
Yeah.
That was like...
Zach says buongiorno.
Buongiorno, mi amor. Yeah.
Zach says a spaghetti.
Oh, okay. Goodbye, all of our Italian listeners.
Let's not.
See you later.
No, arrivederci. The film stars Tilda Swinton, Flavio Parenti, Eduardo Gabriellini, and Alvaro Rocca.
I know there are people on Twitter who are sensitive about like anti-Italian impressions. We should probably not.
Sorry.
Is that okay? Well,
it's a thing. It's a thing. I'm not gonna pretend to understand it. It's a thing.
All right. At a dinner,
I think Zach was just trying his best.
I was just trying my best. At a dinner during which her husband learns that he and his son Eduardo are about to assume control of his father's lucrative business, Emma meets a chef named Antonio. Antonio and Emma soon find themselves in bed together, with the family already divided over the elder's unusual plans. Emma's affair is the wild card that might divide the family for good. While the plot and characters of the film are fictitious, the surname of the family portrayed clearly echoes that of the entrepreneurial family. So the fictional family is Recchi, and the entrepreneurial family is Necchi, which owned the mansion where they filmed many of the scenes in this movie, mixing it with the name of coastal town Recco. Tilda Swinton said the villa was perfect because they were looking for a house, quote, that was part palace, part museum, and part prison. The food and meals in the film were inspired by the cuisine of Karol Krakow, the owner of the Krakow Pek restaurant in Milan. Swinton to IndieWire on making the movie, quote, "We've been talking about making this film for 7 years. Luca and I are very, very old friends. I think we started to talk about a film that we wanted to see, which is pretty much what you just saw. It is a kind of emotional cinema that we were looking for that is very often related to a cinema from the past. And very often you hear people saying, well, that cinema doesn't exist anymore." Swinton to Collider on speaking different languages in the film, quote, "I don't speak Italian well enough to speak fluently, but you know, the strange thing about the language question is that I'm very often speaking in a language that's not my own. When I'm impersonating an American person, I'm not actually speaking in a language that's my own. I'm very often, particularly if I have to improvise an American, that's a stretch because I may want to come up with something that I realize is actually an English or Queen's English construction. And I very often have to kind of work very hard to translate it into American. So it's not that I probably speak, my Italian and my American are probably on par." Swinton again on speaking in a different language in an interview with Deadline. "It was the challenge that one set out years ago to address. But the great thing about it taking so long to make the movie is you have to spread a challenge over a decade in bite-sized pieces. I knew she was going to be an alien. That she wasn't going to speak my language was a relief in many ways. I quite like being outside my own language, particularly someone so silent." 2010, the New York Times said, "By the end of this often soaringly beautiful melodrama, which closes with a funeral, Emma's face will have crumpled into a ruin, but it will also be fully alive, having been granted the breath of life." In 2010, the Washington Post said, "I Am Love is such a lush, deeply textured banquet of sights and sounds that it deserves more than a movie review." And in 2010, Roger Ebert said, "Tilda Swinton is a daring actress who doesn't project emotion so much as embody them. I Am Love provides an ideal role for her in that her actions speak instead of words."
Well, we all know Roger Ebert isn't always on.
We already covered that. It's true. Well, let's go ahead and talk about I Am Love. I want to start with something. I'm going to put Jessica on the spot because she And the old letterbox gave a strong four stars and a heart to this movie. And then watched it for this podcast. And then watched it for this podcast, and it dumped down to 3 stars. So I'm just curious, what do you make of the movie, and what changed over the second viewing?
Yeah, so I watched this movie for the first time in 2017. So it was like 4 years ago.
Was it for a class?
A lifetime ago.
No,
what?
we were
Was it for a class?
No, I was graduated already.
She was just love,
Well, I mean, it kind of like does coincide with where I was in my life at the time, which is like right outside of college, like missing like watching movies with my friends in cinema club, and like trying to find directors. Like I was going through filmographies of directors that were like up and coming at the time, and like Luca Guadagnino made Call Me By Your Name and also A Bigger Splash, and then most recently made Suspiria, so I was like the remake of Suspiria, and so at the time I was like, okay, I want to like go through his filmography and just like get to know him more as a filmmaker. And I guess like if I were to say back then what attracted me to the story is that it feels like it could be related to slow cinema, like in a way, the way that like the story plays out. In retrospect, it's boring and it doesn't really.
Andrew has entered the chat.
It doesn't really like mean anything, but if you don't really understand that, like if you're just looking at it from like the surface level, then the story plays out very slowly, very methodically, and I think still that the characters are like pretty captivating. Like Tilda Swinton's performance is still good in this, if she is the only person carrying the film. But like and it's like beautiful, like Italian food and like landscapes, which is what Guadagnino does best. And like I think that you can get wrapped up in that in the first viewing and kind of think like even if there's nothing underneath the surface, like this is cinema, like this is something that is beautiful, that is showing a story play out from start to finish. And at the end there is a character who has like a different meaning to her life. And when I watched it the second time, I did not feel that way. Like, it felt very boring to me, mostly because I was just like, the characters feel so paper thin, and like I can't just rely on one person carrying the movie anymore. Like, I have to have some sort of depth, and like every other character was extremely paper thin. Like, her children just had like 1 or 2 things about them. Like, the daughter was gay and she was an artist, and like Eduardo is like the reasonable brother who inherits the company, but then is like, we need to stick to our traditional values or whatever. And then the other kids, they did not even care about the other kids. There was like another brother. They
don't even register.
It took us like half the movie to figure out who they would talk about when they were talking about some random child of theirs.
Eduardo, who's like the most important child.
But we kept being like,
the third one, he was the Tiffany. It was just like, oh yeah, he's around. He's around.
So
he's that guy.
and even Antonio, who is the chef / lover, like isn't given depth at all. And even like he's just drops off of the end of the movie. Like after the climax of the film, where the husband finds out that she's like sleeping with Antonio, we don't even get Antonio's like reaction to Eduardo dying or like anything. He just kind of like falls off of the film. So like I think like on second viewing, like it's just so paper thin, and I can't even communicate like what the movie is trying to say or what it's trying to do. And like maybe it's because of my life experience, but I was kind of like, this is just like fucking rich people who are just like having rich people problems. And then I think that the melodrama like didn't work on me the second time, where the first time I watched it, I was like genuinely sad that he died, like fell in the pool and died. And then when I watched it, which also like my partner Cam like busted out laughing when he like fell in the pool because he says that he like his mom grabs his hand and then he falls like laterally, like he jumps sideways and hits his head, and it doesn't make sense like physically how he was able to smack his head on the pool. And so it's kind of just like, Luca, all right, what are you doing? Like, why did you even put that in there? Like, just for dramatic effect? Like, I don't know. So yeah, the melodrama didn't really work the second time. And I think that if the film like focused on her relationship with Antonio, then it would have given us more to work with. Like, we might have been more attached to these characters, and like there is something in there, I think, about how like she's from Russia, and whenever she marries Tancredi, like he calls her Emma, which is not her real name, like it's not her Russian name. And so there's like supposed to be something in there about like Italy isn't her real home. She doesn't feel at home there, and when she's with Antonio, she feels at home because he calls her by her real name.
Wow.
He calls her by her real name, and like treat.
That is a bigger splash.
Oh my god! Yeah. So that, and it was
Suspiria.
Yes. Oh my god. Anyways, so like I read Mo Malley's review of this movie, and he was talking about how like eventually Luca like takes parts of this film and makes a bigger splash, and also Call Me by Your Name, and like in a bigger splash someone else dies in a pool, and just takes like
in an even more like unsatisfying way, because that movie, after the person hits their head on the pool and dies, there's like 25 minutes of a police procedural at the end of the movie that just doesn't fit with the rest of it at all.
Right. So
well, that's the thing about Luca Guadagnino's movies also, is that, you know, like I would have started the movie in the last like 25 minutes of this movie, you know, like that's the interesting part. Like once she's had the affair and like the fallout of the affair, you don't even have the guy dying. I guess you could have him dying, whatever. It was irrelevant. Like it didn't even like, because like I think the core of the story is what you were talking about, Jessica, with like her being Russian, and he never really digs into that. Like there's this whole thing about how she's Russian and she kind of has a loss of identity because she's had to kind of get rid of all her Russianness and completely be Italian. And so she speaks Russian with Eduardo, the son who, you know, has pool problems. And that's about it. And that's like her only connection to her Russian past. And I think it never really takes time to like engage with that. It's so like lost and just kind of floating between all these different other characters who are just boring and irrelevant, you know?
Well, it spends so much time. I feel like it spends so much time of us really like looking through their whole giant house and seeing all these people in their house and like following these people around as they're
and the grandmother
going shopping.
character.
The grandmother it tosses all these characters at us, but does nothing to like actually characterize them or make us care at all about them. It's just frustrating because like when Andrew and I were watching it, we noticed a lot of parallels between it and like maybe the structure of Fanny and Alexander.
Oh my god. Yes. The beginning of this movie feels exactly like the beginning
of because Fanny and Alexander is also like rich people problems movie, I guess, sort of, but also it's just so rich, and you get so much story and perspective from each one of the characters in it. And in this, every now and then we'll get a little tidbit. Like, here's the daughter. She's gay. Anyway, here's Tildy Swildy being sad again or whatever. Here's her fucking in the grass. It's just, yeah, like Jessica said, kind of hollow.
I think that if I could be really generous this movie, like steel man what this movie's doing, I think that the way we're maybe supposed to read this is Tilda Swinton is playing a character who has kind of been robbed of who she is by this like formalized structure of not only the family, like as a general concept, like she's a mom and a wife, but also like the family of this particular family that is like extremely rich and has like this aristocratic name and kind of goes back for generations. And that being a part of that family kind of like means you don't really get to be an individual anymore. You're just kind of like a representative for this family. And
it does a good job of showing that she's clearly very bored and exhausted by all of it.
And like what she ultimately wants is to, I guess, figure out who she is outside of the context of this family. And so her fling with the chef guy kind of offers her the opportunity to do that because she gets to spend some time like completely outside the realm of like her typical social circle. Like she's just with him out in the woods returning to Monkey, like having a good time. And it seems like that is gonna be like a fulfilling, like life affirming thing for her until, and I hate this plot point, it's such a clumsy plot point, but until her son dies and she has to go through the whole formalized rigmarole of the funeral, and she's pulled back in to the family. Just when she thought she was out, they pull her back in. And like, I guess it's a fairly, until like the very last moments, it's kind of like a bleak movie about like how you can't escape the role that's prescribed to you for your from your family. Like,
and she does though.
But then she does. Like, there's just this kind of ridiculous big manic chase at the end of the movie where she runs into the house and she grabs some random stuff and she runs out of the house and the movie just ends there.
And then I guess she's in a cave with him at the end.
Over the credits, she's in a cave. Yeah.
I will say something that he does a really good job of this, and I think in probably all of his movies, is working with the senses. That's something that you talked to me about, Andrew, when we were watching it together. Really drawing out, like, helping you imagine, like, what this food smells like. Or, there's one scene in particular that was really, really beautiful where you're in a cemetery.
Cemetery. This is the podcast that you're on.
You see a like an angel statue in the cemetery, and it starts to rain, and you really hear the texture of the rain, and then you see the angel statue just like slowly get drenched.
Looks like it's crying.
He hired John Travolta from Blowout. Like, we get it.
He can make stuff very visually arresting and really, really play with senses in an interesting way, and I think he does that in every movie I've seen by him. In some sense or another, just really making these big, vibrant scenes come to life. And so I think that that's really true for this too, in some scenes. But then there was also the soundtrack killed this for me. Oh my gosh. I can't explain why, but it just always felt like the weird, like, orchestral kind of
like
music.
Trying to ape a very particular type of like contemporary classical minimalism.
It's John Adams. John Adams is a very specific like type of classical modernism.
I'm not super familiar with John Adams as his own entity, but it felt to me like he was trying to copy Philip Glass and Steve Reich.
He's kind of on that level, but he's like the more he's the British version.
I just felt like the music never ever matched the scene at all. Like, it would be weirdly tense when you're in the middle of them fucking in the forest and the flowers. And it was just like, you'd see, especially in that scene in particular where she first has sex with Antonio and they're like laying in this beautiful field and there's like flowers. It keeps this like flashing back between their bodies and the outdoors, and you can kind of feel the breeze and all that. And it would be even more of an affecting scene if the music didn't suck so bad. It just didn't fit at all, and it irritated me throughout the whole entire movie. Like, this music is not good. It wasn't the music itself was bad, it's just that it did not tonally match at all, and it really irritated me.
Sorry, to vindicate Jessica a little bit, like, I can see why, like, I'm just gonna drag Luca Guadagnino for a while. Because I can see why people like are like go to him, because he's kind of he has all the dressings of a very important filmmaker, but he just has no like concept of like what the audience is interested in. He seems like somebody who's like sitting at his writing desk and is like sitting there going, "Oh yeah, oh my gosh, this is great. This is so great, Luca. This is so great. This is amazing." Because it's, again, like, there's so much of this movie. There's nothing inherently wrong with the movie. And so, like, an hour into it, you're like, yeah, you have these wonderful, lush tapestries. Like, the cinematography is fantastic. Is just luscious. You have, like you're describing, like, these scenes in nature are very luscious. Even, like, you have these very luxurious sequences in this giant house, and the what the dresses that she's wearing, her hair, everything aesthetically is prim and perfect. But there's just, like, he also doesn't understand that you have to have something, engaging. You have to have a story that kind of engages people, because he doesn't have like the technical prowess to just be kind of leading you on aesthetically without giving you much of a narrative. And he kind of has this just kind of emptiness to him, because like A Bigger Splash is the same way. Like you said, like that movie has the kind of the pool person dying in a pool, and it becomes a police procedural, and it's kind of like you get to that point and you're just like, why is this here? It's like he kind of gets to a point where he's like, oh shit, I have to have something happen in this movie to validate this being a movie and this being a story. And I think people get caught up into that stuff. It's like people get caught up into just seeing like that visual palette and saying this is important or this is good. And
I wish that he would feel like it was enough to just kind of like make a hangout film, right? Like, I think that of the ones we've talked about, Call Me by Your Name is by far the strongest, because it doesn't try to force any like big genre tropes into it. It's just like vibing, Yeah, it's also a great.
He finally gets it right.
It's a great like, and to go back to your point, Jesse, about the music, like, he gets the feeling and the tone right in that movie. Like the Sufjan Stevens music, I've often referred to that movie as just a Sufjan Stevens delivery system, and it totally works on that level. But this movie and A Bigger Splash, it just kind of like, it feels like it's unsatisfied just to kind of let its characters kind of luxuriate in each other's company. Like,
it feels like there's not really a vision. Like, he's kind of got like a good setup here, but then has no vision to really carry through and do something interesting with it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I would totally watch Tilda Swinton just like spend the summer in like the woods with her like young lover or whatever. But there has to be all this other stuff tacked onto it, and all this like weird faux intense music on top.
What is he trying to get at? I was also like thinking, like, at the end of the movie, so then you have like why did the son react so like aggressively to her fucking his friend? Like, you could be like, well, that's
Did
shitty.
he even find out?
That's the thing. How the fuck did he figure that out just by I know, but he's the one that told his mom to go talk to his friend about the menu for the business dinner. Like, he says literally, like, go talk to my mom about this business dinner. Like, work out the menu.
I was under the impression...
Well, it showed, like, there's a scene where he's remembering a book.
He barely saw that book. That book was in her closet.
There's a scene where in that scene, he's remembering, like, seeing a book and seeing like a piece of hair that he thought was weird.
Yeah,
but
the hair is funny.
It's flimsy.
The hair is funny because Cam was like, he has a long-haired dog. Like, his dog has the same color like hair as her, and he was like, no way. Like, as soon as he looked at them, and what the movie is showing is not like him remembering things. It's just like pieces that it wants you to think that he puts together. But it's like pieces that the movie has shown you as the audience, but like nothing shows us that he has seen those things. Like it was weird.
I don't know why he would even think it's that much about the book anyway. Like, so what? Your friend has a book. Like, why would you be suspicious of it?
But there was no way. Like it was
okay, because I was wondering that because I was just like, he gets super aggressive about it, and I was just like, where did this come from?
He's like, my fucking childhood soup. You're fucking my mom. I know you are. It's like, how would you know that from the soup? It doesn't make sense.
Jessica, speaking of soup, how do you feel about this as a food movie?
Okay.
I thought the shrimp scene was fantastic.
Yes, I did too. The shrimp scene, like, reminded me a lot of Ratatouille, which we're gonna do in our next series. Spoilers. There's a series coming up. The Ratatouille is. I'm super excited about it. Anyways, so yeah, I mean, if Antonio was like given any depth at all, then sure, like the food would make more sense because we know the artist, like we know why he's making it and what inspires him, but we don't know any of that stuff. Like we know that he works for his dad and his dad won't let him pursue his dreams, so he gets his rich friend to bankroll his restaurant. Like that's all we know about it. We don't know, like, is he begrudgingly doing this? Does he feel bad that his rich friend is bankrolling his restaurant? Does he feel some obligation to do these, like, rich dinners? And he's like, because his friend is paying for everything? Is he getting to express himself? We don't know any of this stuff.
Well, I really got the impression at the beginning of the movie that there was possibly something romantic between those two guys.
It seemed like it.
It really seemed like they were playing that up. Just like the way they interacted with each other, and I mean,
that is more of like a European, like men being able to kiss each other and it not being gay. Like that's you know, like
I mean, I could see some argument being made of, you know, the brother, like he feels like he has to fit into this family role and marry this woman, but he always seems so very flippant about the woman, like, oh yeah, he's my girlfriend or whatever. Anyway, how are you, Antonio? Mom, meet my friend Antonio. He's a great cook. He's so cool. How are you? And then he's like, oh yeah, and here's my girlfriend or whatever. I guess I'm gonna ask her to marry me or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah.
It seemed like they were kind of drawing that up, and then I think there's also an argument to be made, like, you know, they didn't want to act on this. And so, like, Antonio kind of made the moves on Tilda because he couldn't kind of itch that scratch with Edo or whatever his name is. And then Edo, whatever the fuck his name is. And then maybe, like, the
Eduardo.
son. Well, they called him Edo.
They called him EDO.
They called him Edo several times.
Oh, okay. I was like, wait, what?
I know his name.
Scratch that itch.
And then, like, maybe that's one reason why Eduardo gets all mad is because, like, I can't believe my mom would do this, and, like, this is what I really wanted. I'm making good points. You guys are laughing. Lame.
Yeah,
so I read that as kind of homo-romantic.
Okay, well, maybe we should talk about Tilda Swinton for a minute, since this is our Tilda Swinton series.
Hey.
I thought you were done with your homoerotic point.
I was, I guess. Goodbye. Tilda was great. She did very good. Good for her. But the movie still sucks.
Well, like, I'm wondering, why does she like working with Luca Guadagnino? Like, she's been in a lot of his movies now. This one, A Bigger Splash. She played 2 people in Suspiria.
3.
So
she plays 3 people in Suspiria.
Okay, so why does she like working with this guy? What about him as a filmmaker is she attracted to? I would like to know.
I feel like he probably talks a good game, and that's it.
In Bigger Splash and Suspiria, he lets her play, like, very interesting, unique roles, which seems to be kind of Tilda's MO. Like, she wants to be kind of odd characters, right? In A Bigger Splash, she's basically David Bowie, which, like, I know a lot of people want Tilda to play David Bowie in an actual David Bowie biopic, but she's like a fictionalized version of him in that movie, and she's like on vocal rest, so she has to do the whole thing non-verbally basically, and that's kind of an interesting like exercise for an actor. And in Suspiria, of course, she gets to play 3 roles, and only one of them is like what a conventional like role for a woman would even be. One of them, she's like a big like mud monster, and another she's like an elderly German man who you don't even know is Tilda Swinton until the credits roll. Oh I don't really know what she sees in this role, other than maybe like she has a friendship with Luca Guadagnino and they wanted to make a particular kind of movie and she was like willing to act the part. But you know, we've been talking about the way that Tilda Swinton performs gender in her movies, kind of like outside of the traditional binary. And this is like probably her most like conventional like feminine role that I've seen her in. Though like some of the ways that the sex scenes play out and are shot are kind of interesting in how like close she lets him get to her body with the camera. And like linger for a super, super long time. Like there are parts of one of the sex scenes where you're just seeing like really close-up shots of like random parts of people's bodies, which is kind of interesting. But yeah. Oh, also another thing that I thought was interesting about her performance here is that so like in Orlando, so much of the like emotions of the character goes pretty much unstated, and so she has to perform a lot just using facial expressions. And there's kind of like a camera technique of capturing that too that Guadagnino does, where whenever Tilda Swinton specifically has like an epiphany about something, instead of like having her make some sort of big motion, he will just give you like 3 really quick close-ups on her face from different angles, like a blast of here's her from the right, here's her from super close up, here's her from whatever angle. And there's kind of like an interesting like dialogue happening between like the camera and the editing and her like very understated physical performance. But I still don't think that, I mean, as we've said, it doesn't really feel like that's enough to save the movie, but there is a lot of craft that's kind of being thought through here.
I liked in there are a handful of scenes the movie did it. I feel like it kind of dropped off after a certain point, but there's a handful of scenes where she's like thinking, kind of replaying certain thoughts or conversations in her head while she's like driving into town or something. Yeah. The movie does a lot of what you were describing, like kind of showing a little bit of like her face and then what like a juxtaposed over the driving sequence. Yeah. And then you're just hearing like stray thoughts, and I don't know, it kind of reminded me, or like as I'm saying this, I think it kind of ties into what Zach was saying about what was the movie Sansho the Bailiff. Sansho the Bailiff, where like it's interesting to see movies that portray memories in more creative ways, because I think that that's more realistic to how memories do play out for us. They don't just play out in I'm watching this scene of when me and Andrew got married or something like that. But what you remember are maybe like the way the music sounded, or the way a cake tasted, or the way just something smelled,
of images,
or flashes of images, or certain sensorial experiences of a memory, or certain snippets of conversations that really stick with you. And so I think that that's interesting in both those movies, kind of play with how memories actually sit in our brains. Well, but anyway. Except
Mizuguchi knows how to make them.
That sounds better than what we watched for sure. The way you were describing it, though, I would have made that point earlier, but you kind of kept going, and I decided to let it drop. The way you described it does sound really good. So I just wanted to compare those two. But I liked that scene in this movie too. But anyway, I was gonna say I also liked the way she portrayed the grief, like her grieving. I felt like that was really powerful. Just the way like she just doesn't want to even get out of bed, and there's a scene where they're trying to dress her for the funeral, and it's like she's just like a little doll or something, and they're just ripping the clothes off her body, putting clothes on her body, and she's just still like she can't speak kind of and process.
There's like a mirroring happening there between that scene in the very beginning where she's like getting dressed for the big banquet they're having, where it feels like she's putting on armor or something. You know, like it's a very like serious like procedure of like getting herself ready to be met by all these people. You know?
I just felt like mostly it was more her body language than anything there that really captured the shock that she was in from this loss.
Yeah, her arms kind of like hang limp and stuff.
I thought that was that was powerful on her end. Sorry, Zach. Go ahead.
No, I just wanted to say I thought her quote, because it is pretty interesting. She speaks Russian and Italian in this movie. She doesn't speak any English very much, if at all. And I thought her point about how, you know, it's not that different of a thing compared to kind of having to lace on like an American English compared to like English, more traditional English or the Queen's English. I thought that was kind of an interesting point because it is true. You know, you think of like that seems like something that she'd be very adept at. I was also thinking just about like, you know, we talked about like the extravagance of this movie, like how it kind of luxuriates and all this luxury and everything, but it's also like not even the best example of that because you think of just something. I mean, like just a couple weeks ago with like Orlando. Or even like this, this kind of felt to me like B-level Derek Jarman because like I was thinking of the first two movies that we watched and I was like, this is not even on the same level of like luxuriating in just like this excess.
Well, speaking of stray thoughts, another stray thought that I have is that the way this movie is shot, like the cameras they used for it, and the way that it's put together, like with the title sequence and the chapter titles and everything, does kind of make it seem like it's one of those movies that feels plucked out of another time. Like, did it feel like it was an Italian movie, like from the 1970s to you, except the fact that it had Tilda Swinton in it? I don't know, like, if that necessarily makes me like it more or less, or, you know, if it changes my opinion about the movie at all, but... that's just kind of an interesting choice that I picked up on immediately when the opening credits started.
Yeah.
Anything else on I Am Love before we wrap it up? I do not recommend.
Nah, I think it's fine.
Nah, you can find better stuff.
Yeah, I was really looking forward to it. I was thinking that this would be like the Guadagnino movie I would connect to the most, but unfortunately not.
No, that dude's a poser.
He kind of is.
I think I'm still like cautiously interested in seeing what else he ends up doing, but
adapting a Bob Dylan album.
It's been like less than 50-50 for me. I think he's interesting, but
just watch an interview with this guy. He's so into his own sauce. It's just boring. He's just a boring person.
Yeah. What kind of sauce is it?
Whatever was in the prawns.
The prawns.
Yeah,
prawn sauce.
that prawn sauce. He's so into
those
that
little
sauce.
prawns. They looked good. Those
did
prawns
look
really
good. That's why I'm saying, like, I can see why he would be more into the guy than his fiance, because his fiance was just like, I'm pretty, and he was like, this dude can cook and make some fucking good prawns, and
but
he fucks my mom real well, so like he seems cool.
The dude was wearing tidy-whitey.
Yeah. Thanks for pointing that out.
Bad.
I did want people to know about that. That was bad.
Is there a letterbox list of tidy-whitey cinema? Because that seems like a good one.
Sounds like you need to start that, Zach.
I don't want to do the work on that. I'm just saying, like, I'm tossing it out there.
I'm not doing it. I'm not doing the research for that.
That seems like an Ash thing.
How does one spell tidy whitey is the question.
We'll figure it off recording.
I was gonna say TIDDY. I'm like, is that titty? Is that tiddy?
TIDDY?
Whitey. Can my last thought? Let me just say last thing. I don't blame her at all, because her husband was the most bland ass person in the history
His
of
character
people.
was like a potato, man. He didn't do
but
shit in
what
that
was
movie.
funny
except
about
for get
it is
pissed at
I
him.
looked.
Like, she's like, I don't want missionary for the rest of my life. I'm out.
He kind of looks like Luca Guadagnino, actually. I noticed, like, I was like, wait, is he in his own movie? And then I had to double check. It's not him. It's a different person.
Oh, man. I think Luca Guadagnino should just do avant-garde movies, maybe, instead. Like,
Yeah.
he'd probably be pretty good at that.
He feels like he already is, to be honest. He's like, I am.
Stop killing your characters in a pool and just, like, show
Yeah.
me some good flowers or something.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
We get it, dude.
All right, well, I'll wrap up this episode of Cinematary. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Cinematary, on Twitter and Instagram at handle @Cinematary, and on Letterboxd at letterboxd.com/Cinematary, where we post all the movies that we talked about in this episode. Also, catch us on Patreon, patreon.com/Cinematary. We're going to have a special Patreon exclusive thing for our next series that we're going to talk about next week. So it should be fun. So if you have not joined, this is the best time to do that. Thank you to our patrons: Cam, Chad Newsom, Christina Daughtry, Corey Willingham, Harry Eskin, Maggie, Ron Hayes, Titus Arthur, Tyler Chandler, and Whitney Rio Ross. Thank you so much for your patronage. Next week, we will be concluding our Tilda Swinton series with We Need to Talk About Kevin. We don't have anybody on who's named Kevin. That's too bad. That's a joke that could have happened. Yeah.
Ah, we should try to find a Kevin.
If your name is Kevin, Zach at cinematary.com.
Maybe not. Maybe not.
We need
Don't do that.
My dad's name is Kevin. Do you want to talk to my dad?
No.
Well, I just want I want like
We talk
a Kevin
about it.
here so I can be like, hey,
No.
Kevin, we need to talk about you. And that
No.
guy's just like, why did I join this podcast?
That would be a really funny joke.
Well, I would
You
do
probably
it-
should do that.
I would do it so many
Hilarious.
times during the podcast that the guy would quit, like mid-podcast.
How many times to get tally until he finally signs off?
All right, I'll wrap it
Sounds
up.
like a great joke.
See you next week.